Greetings everyone, Adam here, and today I am talking about Atomic Heart. It's been out for a few days now. I completed the game from start to finish, and it's okay. So let's discuss and see how this game holds up and whether you want to buy it or not, or play it on Game Pass. It is on Game Pass. So Atomic Heart takes place in an alternative universe where the USSR is the dominant superpower. You play as Sergei, a USSR operative, and his companion Glove, which serves as his AI ally throughout the game. Now, the core of the story is that USSR gained prominence after discovering a brand new type of material called polymer. This allowed for breakthroughs in energy and robotics, allowing them to basically surpass the United States in reconstruction after World War II, where the Germans unleashed the brown virus, which killed a lot of people. And since there weren't enough workers and the USSR had an advancement in robotics using this polymer, they were able to rebuild the world. So it's technically the Cold War, but the USSR is leading in a lot of ways. And right from the start, you see that they are really showcasing their prominence. The visual and artistic design of this game is definitely the standing ovation that it gets. It is absolutely brilliant. You definitely see all the propaganda. You see the robots in the street. Literally, the opening scene has a robot come to you and say, "Do you want some soda?" It gives you some soda and it goes away. So all the conveniences that you could ever want are there. And every construction job, every retail job, it showcases that every type of meaningless job, or like, filler job that could be taken over by robots, that will eventually, as we saw things with Flippy and stuff like that, have been. But since this is a communist society, everyone is given enough to survive, so everyone seems to be living in this type of utopia. Problem is when you give robots full control of the means, when they go rogue, everything crumbles, like iRobot, and that's exactly what happens. The robots go rogue, they start killing everyone on sight, and you have to find out who is responsible for switching the robots into combat mode when they were not supposed to be combat mode. They're supposed to be construction robots. Now, the narrative itself is not that great, but it does have great execution. Like with The Last of Us. The Last of Us story is generic in a lot of ways. The second you meet Ellie, you know she's immune, she's going to be the savior of everything, but it's the way that it was executed. It's why it's considered one of the best games of all time, cinematically speaking. Same thing here. It's not the best game of all time, but the execution of what you know is going to happen is very well done. You know what's going to happen down the line, but still the way they present it is extremely well done. Now, the story itself does have some okay characters. They're never given enough time in the spotlight in order to become prominent figures. Yes, they try to create this dynamic between Glove and Sergei. The problem is that you never really feel like they're bonded. Right from the bat, you see that they trust each other. There's very little back and forth, despite the fact that he should literally rip the thing out of his glove after so many betrayals it gives you. But it's never really believable. Like, he gives the glove a lot of second chances, and it's never really warranted. Like, the story does have some sort of Deus Ex Machina where it says this is why he's doing everything that's happening, and it kind of goes against when you get into the multiple endings of the game. There are two endings to this game, and one of the endings, it just doesn't make sense. He just like, in the context of everything, it just doesn't really make sense of why he does it. It's the false ending, and then you also have the true ending, which is a lot darker and definitely leads up to something for a sequel. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's extremely hard to pull off. I think the best examples of pulling off a sequel bait would be Dragon Age Inquisition and Gears of War 2. One of the worst examples would be Halo 2 and Gears 5. That is just my opinion. If you have different opinions, put them in the comments below and tell me why. But I think that when you lead up to a new game, you really have to execute it very well. And this, I would say, is bare average at best. Like, you don't even see it coming. It just happens, and then the game is like, yep, just wait for the next game. Or maybe DLC. Maybe that might happen if this game does well, but I don't know. We'll see. For now, yeah, the definite draw of the game is the artistic presentation and the art direction. Like, the game is beautiful. It looks amazing. There are technical problems. There's pop-in. There are slowdowns in the frame rate. I played this on the Xbox Series X, And you can definitely see from the distance that items will just slow down in frame rate, and it just happens so frequently. Granted, this is a AA game, so I'm not expecting like Final Fantasy level of quality, but I really think they should have optimized this game, because even though there weren't any crashes, I never experienced any crashes. I did experience issues where the game would just flat out stop, like slow down, and then restart again. It happened only about once. I don't know if I'll be able to find it in my footage, but I remember happening during a boss fight where everything is happening. So in terms of the story, it's average, nothing really spectacular about it. It's really the visual design that pushes the narrative forward. I know a lot of people compare this game to BioShock. They even have a BioShock reference there.
So that's Neptune, huh? Looks nice. Actually, it looks amazing. A rapture. I wouldn't mind spending some time there myself.
But I would say this game is more in line with Deus Ex than BioShock in terms of how the game plays and how it just... Like, if you've played Deus Ex, especially Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, you'll definitely get more of that game than you will of BioShock. I've played every BioShock game to come out, and I definitely think this game is more in line with Deus Ex. I've only played a few hours of System Shock, so I can't attest for that, even though people are saying that's more in line of that. Now, let's move on to gameplay. Now, the gameplay is varied. They give you sneak in, which is extremely bare bones. You don't really need to do it, and yeah, I've only done it like a couple of times. I can see doing this for hardcore mode where you have to avoid enemies more frequently since resources are much more rare, but yeah, it's there, and it's ruined with QuickTime events. This game has QuickTime events. I don't know why game developers still put QuickTime events in their game. Most of the time they have the option to disable that stuff because Capcom popularized it in Resident Evil 4, then they killed it with Resident Evil 6. It's kind of ironic that the company that popularized QuickTime events ended up killing it, and people are just like me are fed up with it. I don't know, maybe some people like it. There's always some people who do, but as far as I can tell, a lot of people don't, and I wish there was an option, or at least I couldn't find one in the accessibilities options that you could turn this off. So whenever you sneak on enemies, you have to do a QuickTime event where you tap A or X quickly, and then he executes the enemy. But I rarely use sneak in the second I gained a viable build in terms of like melee in particular. Since ammo, you do get guns. You get like a handgun, an electrical gun that charges over time. The electrical gun sounds really weird, like you're shooting some sort of zapper, like a toy zapper that just has a sound, a chip in it. It sounds really weird, like bong. And then there's also the AK-47, you have a railgun, you have a lot of really cool weapons. All the cool weapons, you have to go through the optional content. There are these like blueprint zones where you go in and do puzzle platformer challenges, and then you get the blueprint. I never really knew if I completed the sector. I don't know, maybe this is just me, but I never knew if I completed it because there was no like completion graphic that appeared, so I was always wondering, did I get everything in there? Maybe there is and I did miss stuff. Tell me if you found a graphic that happens, but you go into these sectors, you complete some puzzle platformer challenges or combat challenges, and then you get a blueprint which you can use to craft it at these stations. Now, there is an interesting character at these stations. It's basically another one of these rogue AIs, but this one is like a sexual deviant where she constantly uses sexual innuendos to try and convince you to, you know, do stuff to it, and it's a masochist. It's really unsettling, but it's also like kind of that dark comedy stuff that's pretty cool, but you never evolve their relationship beyond her just doing, you know, those creepy sex things until finally it becomes exhausting. You're just like, you're not really moving this character forward. But yeah, in terms of the upgrade system, you can upgrade your weapons, your character, and you can craft resources based on the material you acquire by killing enemies. There are several different types of resources. I never kept track of what is what. There are like 8 or 9 of these things, and I just said, okay, I have enough of this, I'll just invent this, and that's it. The thing is, there is a storage system, but the thing is that the game doesn't register if you have a weapon that you already own in storage. So if you already have like a handgun and you put it into storage, it'll say you don't have the weapon. So unless you're keeping track of that, you'll be like, don't I have this gun? And it'll just give you the base model. You can upgrade your weapons further, Although the interface I think is really really poor. Like they tried to go for the Destiny 2 interface where everyone is trying to do because they're trying to mimic mouse movements and mouse interfaces are superior to what's on console instead of actual just selecting tiles situation. I don't know. I just feel like it's really cumbersome. They have all these different things, and you get information overload very quickly when you're trying to upgrade stuff. But you can upgrade a lot of things, and I really think guns are very super powerful. Like you always want a gun in your hand, and since ammo is rare to come by in the overworld, you can only get it from specific caches. You're expected to craft ammo from the crafting station. Same thing for health items. Health items, at least I found, are very non-existent, so you have to craft that as well. And everything keeps up an inventory slot, which is similar to like the HES case from attaché case from Resident Evil, or again, Deus Ex with its inventory system. It's very easy. You just click auto sort and it sorts everything to the best of its ability. At that point, I think they should have just, had a basic inventory system, but this one works. It's nothing against it, but you definitely have to craft healing items, ammo, and you'll basically rinse through most stuff. And I think the developers knew this because in the overworld, eventually you go into an enclosed facility where they teach you the basics, the special abilities like the electroshock. You'll also get a shield, telekinesis, a freezing power. I never used the freezing power, but everyone said it was very overpowered. I barely used any of my powers. I literally just used the guns because it would kill everything so easily. I can see what they were going for here, but really the guns just demolish everything, so I rarely used my powers. When I started the game on hardcore, yeah, I started using my powers more frequently, but if you're playing on the normal difficulty, you're just never going to really have a moment to use them unless you really, really want to. But the guns are super overpowered, but the melee weapons suck. Like, that's the thing. I really think that the melees need a boost unless you upgrade your weapon and your character to take a hit, because you're going to get knocked down a lot. This game has so many knockdown animations, it becomes exhausting. They try to complement this with a dashing system. When you dash, you gain invincibility frames, so you can avoid those knockdown hits. But since that's on a charge system, like Doom Guy from Doom Eternal, here it's very annoying. Like, every time I kept getting knocked down, and I was just like, come on, there's no ability to remove this, so you'll just get knocked down more times than the first Yakuza game. Thank God there's no quick time event to tap yourself back up, but yeah, it's just very, very annoying. Either turn down the knockback or give your melee strikes a little more oomph, or even add a guard in. Like, that was actually surprising. I was like, there is no guard function in this game, and you would expect that to happen because they put heavy emphasis on melee, seeing that a lot of enemies you face do have melee capabilities, so I think a guarding would have been very good implementation. But again, maybe it's for balancing because, like I stated, your melee is it's so weak. I know, you're fighting robots, you're not really going to hurt them with an axe, but still, like, there has to be a balance. Now, when you get to the open world section, it's a semi-open world. As far as I can tell, there's no fast travel points, which is very annoying. I didn't find any. I tried not to use a guide when playing this game, and I couldn't find any fast travel points. There is cars that you can use. There's crappy cars littered around. You can take them and drive them. They do break down if you hit too many enemies. But the open world, to me, is very disappointing. Like, they do have, like, optional collectibles. Like, you can speak to dead characters who still have some of their mind intact because of the polymer injections. So sometimes they know they're dead and they're praying for death. Or some of them just know they're dead and they have this dark comedy moment where they're like, yeah, I'm dead, just take my ticket and go away, I don't really care. And then there would be some really twisted survival horror crap that happens where you're just like, it's something out of Silent Hill or The Evil Within. And it's pretty damn disturbing.
Remember me. Remember me. Remember me. Remember me. Remember me.
So they definitely could have gone off the deep end with a lot of this stuff, and sometimes they do. Now, I do wish that there were more human characters you could interact with there aren't a lot because the robots were very efficient in killing everyone. So there's very limited human interaction between between anyone in this world, which I think would have been a great way. Like, you do sometimes interact with them, but more chances are not the game is just going to kill them off because they don't want that type. Maybe they're just like, we can't pay this voice actor, or maybe it's easier just to kill them off. Either way, the semi-open world is not that impressive because another thing is that the enemies respawn at such an alarmingly fast rate. Like, I would kill like 5 or 6 enemies, and then within 10-15 seconds they're back because they have these repair drones that instantly come out the second any of them are dead, and then they'll repair them sometimes in droves, and you'll just see like enemies stacked up, and you'll be like, what was the point of all that? I mean, you can kill them again and farm resources, which I think the game developers were aware of, so you can literally just keep killing them if you have the patience and the ammo to do so, because again, melee is basically garbage. But they just come out at such an alarming rate that it makes it completely pointless to fight anything if you're doing it intentionally. It's always more frugal and more prudent to just run away as quickly as possible. Now, there is a system where you can shut down all those robots temporarily, but it's such a hassle to do that it's better to just run for it. And that's what I did for a majority of the game. You can use these types of stations to also get like a bird's eye view on the map, and then they open new areas that were locked off by fences or unclimbable walls, which, you know, it's an interesting idea, but once you have to do it multiple times, that's when it gets annoying, because the game does definitely suffer from that. Like, on multiple occasions, you can tell that the developers like something so much that they put it side by side to the point that it becomes exhausting. Like, there's this magnet puzzle that you have to do multiple times back to back, and there's a turn and valve puzzle where you turn the geometry of the level. It's cool, but you have to do it back to back, and then later on in the game, they never reintroduced this puzzle. I think it's the best idea to showcase this type of element would be Josh Hayes' reviews on when he does games. He always states that you should take these mechanics and introduce new systems to them over the course of the game, or place them in different situations, but they never do that. They just put them back to back, forget they ever exist, and move on. The only mechanic that they introduce consistently is the lockpicking puzzles. There are 3 locks. One is a time challenge where you hit down all the brackets in a rhythm pattern. The other one is matching colored orbs to the respective orbs. And lastly is just a push pin lock where you find the code and you input the push pins. They do this so frequently that it becomes such an upsetting situation to do it. Like, every door has these lockpicks. I was praying for just a deadbolt, like in Resident Evil, where you could just click it and it's gone. Like, the first few times it's okay. Like, it's like, okay, these are interesting, cool puzzles. But when you do it for the 20th time, that's when you're like, oh my god, I want this to end. Stop it. I don't want this to do this anymore. You will pray for anything else to happen other than that lockpicking puzzle. Now, the enemy variety is pretty healthy. You fight a decent array of robots, and a lot of them have their own unique animations and styles of combat. Nothing against the robots. You have some mini-boss robot encounters, and they're all construction robots, which makes them, like, very cool looking in the sense they're designed for, like, heavy labor and stuff like that. So, nothing against the enemy variety. You definitely fight a decent array. It's when you get into the semi-open world and you find like 10, 15, 20 of these things, and they all can just instantly respawn. That's when it gets annoying. But there are also mutant enemies. There are these plant zombies, not like the cordyceps from The Last of Us. Those are fungi. But here, they're pretty cool. Like, these respawn points will basically spawn out spores that hunt dead bodies and turn them into these very cool-looking mutant creatures. It's actually pretty well designed. I wish they went a little further with it. There are 2 variants of this. The first one is like a more heavily mutated one where it seems like it's been mutated for a long time. And the third one is like where it becomes like something out of Prey. I can't remember the creature's name, but the creatures from Prey, basically. The new game, the latest Prey game that came out from Bethesda, which is criminally underrated. But yeah, it does have some pretty cool mutant enemies. I didn't like the infinite respawns. Like, those... you would have to basically track the spawn points for these spore pods, and you have to kill them, and it's such an annoying to do it. Like, again, they repeat it so many times that you become very annoyed with the system, and come on, infinite respawns have kind of phased out, just like one hit kills. But I guess they just needed to put that in order to create tension within the game when it just becomes annoyance. But the game does try to complement it with a scanning ability, but the scanning ability is very bare bones. But I never really felt that combat was annoying. I always enjoyed it because you gain a lot of resources. They do have this cool system where your glove can just basically just draw material from you as long as you're just holding it in the vicinity of where the material is dropped, which I think is a really cool concept. Now, as you progress through the game, it does do the classic information dump. Like, there will be sections where your character's just like, what's happening? And then your glove or the character that's presented to you will literally just say, hey, this is what's happening. All of this is happening. And that's it. Definitely, it's one of those games where the main campaign is short, but they try to extend its length by adding the optional content. Like, I think this game would have actually been a lot better if it was a linear game. The best game I could compare it to is Metro Exodus in that idea, because in Metro Exodus, I always felt like the game would have been a lot better as a linear game. The open world sections, whenever I had to go into the open world, I always felt like the game wasn't being presented as its full potential. It's like only when I got into the enclosed areas of Atomic Heart where I really started to let go and just feel like I'm having a lot of fun. It's when I was pushed into the open world that I really felt like I just want to get to the next main campaign mission or one of these enclosed areas. And it's just that the semi-open world just seems like a buffer for what is the real good content. Now, if you're trying to use the navigational point, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. I don't know who programmed this waypoint, but it is one of the worst waypoints I've ever experienced in my life. Like, when you play through the main hub world, not the main hub world, the first facility, they tell you to get 4 containers. And the waypoints are pointed at the 4 points of where the containers need to be placed, instead of the areas you have to go to. I know a lot of people will say, well, just explore, you'll find it. That's fine. But the fact that the waypoints are pointing towards the containers is still, like, stupid. And then there's this section where you have to go to the theater. If you fight the mini-boss, the game will instantly put the waypoint towards the theater. And since the theater is underground, it places the waypoint across a bridge that you can't access right now. The game segments off portions of the open world that you're not allowed to go into with these laser grids. Some of them you can pass through with major damage, but in the open world, you can't do that at all. So I went to the bridge, and I was like, I can't go here. Am I doing something wrong? And it turns out that the hidden facility that leads into the theater that I have to go into is, like, behind the grassy area where I fought the boss, that it doesn't even indicate that it's there. It's, like, just hidden out there. And I'm just like, why is the waypoint there when it should be pointing at that door? It's like, you only run into this segment only about, like, twice I've only been lost. But at the same time, I'm like, this is terrible. Like, at that point, I stopped looking for the waypoint. I just literally just said, screw it. I'm going to go in any direction I want that the waypoint doesn't point me at. And it can become incredibly upsetting if you're one of those people who needs a lot of directional help like I do. Like, I suck at directions in video games. In the real world, I'm good at them. In the game, tell me where I have to go because I'm going to get lost. Now, I haven't discussed the puzzle platforming sections of this game. This game has terrible jumping. It does. It's really bad. Like, you jump like a 80-year-old woman who's just trying to get over a broom that's about half a centimeter above the ground. Or like Samurai Jack when he's first trying to discover how to jump good. Like, I think Sergei might have rocks on his back that are invisible because he can't jump for crap. But the puzzle platforming sections can get frustrating. They're not hard. It's just the platforming sucks a lot. They try to incorporate everything into this game, and it just either doesn't work that well or is incredibly mediocre. And because it's incredibly mediocre, you'll feel such an annoyance when you have to do it. Again, combat is fun. Like, the animations are very sick. Like, they really have this very effective system where you see the character moving in lifelike situations, but the cursor is held straight into the center of the screen, especially if you upgrade. If you upgrade, you don't even need to hold down the sights. You literally can shoot from the hip and it will hit every single time. That's what I did, at least. But For the animations between like how you're moving, I feel like it's just so incredible while they complement the idea of you playing a video game. So the combat is definitely a highlight. It's the puzzle platforming where I'm just like, this is so damn annoying. They do have this simple laser puzzle. I never found it too hard. Just match the lasers based on the icons on the left side. It's simple, nothing really too complicated. But yeah, that's everything I have to say about Atomic Heart. Definitely the draw of this game is the visual design. People are going to look at this game and think it looks amazing, and it does. Like, the cinematics in this game are graphic, they're beautiful, they're incredible, and they definitely touch on a lot of real-world examples of what these robots would do and what people would do with this type of technology if given at a time where they're just not ready for it. I know, like, people were complaining about the sexual nature of this game, and to be honest, the game does address it. I mean, it's the reality of it. Like, you see incredibly attractive things like this. Guaranteed, people are going to use them for intimate means. It's just like in Detroit Become Human. They don't even shy away from that. They literally say, yeah, people go to these, like, clubs in order to sleep with robots. In fact, there was a scene in Detroit Become Human where you can see a woman just got done sleeping with one of these robots and she's having a cigarette. So in this game, they don't shy away from that, and they shouldn't, because that's how humans would use these types of technology. They would use it for their own benefit, either for work, pleasure, obedience, a lot of things. And I love that the developers never shied away from that. They literally just showcase, yeah, people do that. Like, why wouldn't they? They're people.
Are the ballerinas here just ballerinas?
The topic of robosexuality is extremely popular among the Soviet elite. Robosexual lobbies have become quite powerful, and it would seem that the sale of related services is flourishing at the theater. In other words, no, the ballerinas are not just ballerinas.
Do you think the boss knows about this?
What do you think?
Well, given the robots he's chosen as bodyguards, guess he's a robosexual himself.
According to Ozhigov's Dictionary of the Russian Language, the word robosexual is a facetious term for a person who enjoys intimate relations with machines, generally while manipulating...
Okay, I get it. He can go ahead and manipulate whatever he wants. What he does with those androids of his is none of my business. But I gotta admit, they are kinda hot.
Who are like this. And that's what I kind of really loved about Atomic Heart. It doesn't shy away from stuff that a lot of people would think people would do in this type of placement, this type of power, all this stuff given to them. And in the end, I enjoyed the game. I think it's decent enough. It has a lot of really good ideas. It's just the technical issues that I think they really need to polish on and maybe make adjustments to melee combat so it's a lot more viable, especially when you run out of ammo. When you run out of ammo, you're just going to have to beat this bullet sponge with an axe or something. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I had the wrong build. Maybe I didn't upgrade enough. I didn't upgrade my weapons fully, but you can't really get to these enemies without upgrading fully. So maybe it's just that I rushed through the campaign. I don't know, but I just found melee needs to be touched up a lot more. And the boss fights are definitely cinematic. Like, if you get to one of these real boss fights, I'm not talking about the mini boss fights. The mini boss fights are kind of a drag, but the actual boss fights, they go completely buck wild, and it's freaking amazing, especially the final boss fight. I think it was an amazing final boss fight. You don't get a lot of that nowadays. Some people kind of just say, no, the ending should be enough. I kind of love when developers say, nope, there has to be a final boss fight. Here it is, and they go completely amazing with it. There's also a great twist when you find out who these robot ballerinas are, so I will say that the game definitely needs some more polish, like to fix the frame rate and maybe a few of the issues with the waypoints, and boost melee, because dear god, it's still so annoying when you run out of ammo and you have to use a axe that barely does any damage. Maybe there's a weapon I missed out on, I'm not sure, but from the weapons I used, dear god, it barely did anything. Definitely the boss fights were the highlight of the game, and maybe if this game does well, we'll get a sequel or a DLC that concludes the narrative points that they left off on. Overall, it's a decent game. I don't think it's on the class of Deus Ex, System Shock, or, well, I haven't finished System Shock, but BioShock definitely not. It's not in the same caliber of the BioShock games, even BioShock 2, which is starting to gain more traction as people start to appreciate it more, that they play it as its own game. Either way, if I were to give this game a score because numbers are all the rave, you know what? I'm not going to give it a score. I'm just going to say I recommend it. It's a decent 7 to 10 hour game. And if you're looking for something that's similar to the games I just mentioned, it'll definitely be that way for you. Overall, good game, decent effort, and you'll definitely enjoy it if you are into those dark science fiction adventures like I am. Either way, if you liked the video, like it. If you didn't, dislike it. Support links are below. Patreon, super thanks, join in, all that stuff. And I'll see you all later. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.